It's literally the last day of June, and the only thing I'm freaking out about is that I literally haven't had time to do anything BookTube related for 2 months. Hey everyone, my name is Envy, and well, I haven't been around much. I was writing my thesis, I was wrapping things up for my minor, and things got a little bit chaotic. I almost missed multiple deadlines, I forgot I had deadlines, and suddenly it was June and I realized, hey, people are doing mid-year freakout tag thingies. Maybe I should too. Now that I finally do have time for something like that, we're gonna do that. But first I want to get into some stats because I like stats, and also I think they're a nice addition to this whole concept. So even though I've been extremely busy, I barely had time to eat and sleep, I somehow managed to read more books in the first half of 2021 than I read in all of 2020. I read a total of 59 books, of which 55 were actual novels and stuff, 3 were graphic novels, and 1 audiobook was also included in the mix. My favorite genres so far this year were young adult and fantasy, so no surprises there. It's been known since I was like 12. A bit more surprising is that 10 out of the books I've read were non-fiction, and I think that's the most non-fiction I've ever read in like a period of 6 months. And also the overview of my year so far shows pretty damn well when I was writing the bulk of my thesis. You can see that really nicely, I think. April was hell and May was even worse. So that was my reading so far, summarized in a bunch of stats, for which I want to thank the Storygraph. Of course this video is not sponsored, but I really appreciate their platform because it's not related to Amazon in any way, and because their stats are just perfect. I love everything with stats, and I love that I didn't have to make them on my own this year because they were right there on the Storygraph. So with that out of the way, let's move on. Best book you've read so far. Okay, this is going to sound really sad, but I have trouble choosing because there hasn't been anything that blew my mind or that just got me obsessed. So I'm just gonna pick 2 books here that I liked. The first was Nanking Road by Anne Verhoeven. I have talked about this one in detail in a different video, so I'll link that. And then I finished this one like the other day. This is The Golem and the Genie by, how do you pronounce this name in English? Let me do it the Dutch way. Helene Wecker. Sounds much better when I do it like that instead of just butchering it with my pronunciation. Nanking Road is this very emotional story about the Second World War, and The Golem and the Genie is about a golem and a genie, such a surprise. And they meet in New York City in 1899, and it's more a story about immigration, a lot of people say online. I liked it because it was like realistic but with a hint of magic, and the writing style just made me feel like curling up under a blanket on a rainy day, and I like books that make me feel cozy somehow. I think there aren't a lot of people who associate this book with that feeling of coziness, but I do, and I just love that, even though it was like 30 degrees while I was reading. Best sequel you've read so far. Again, I'm gonna give you 2 books because I can't choose and that's an issue, but the Magnus Chase series is great, and I've discovered the whole middle book syndrome thing in trilogies, and this one does not suffer from that syndrome, and I appreciate that so much because there are so many trilogies I've reread over the past 6 months because I've been going through all my books from high school that suffer from second book syndrome so badly that I just want to give up on the entire series and give the books away to a 13-year-old I know. So yeah, this one didn't do that, and I appreciate that. And then there's this random sequel to the 100 trilogy, like the TV series. You might be more familiar with that one. So I did not know this book existed, but then in January I was looking up series that I never completed because, well, life happened in 2016, and I found out that this one had appeared. Never heard of it, and it turned out to be like the only book in the series that had an actual promising plot, and I think it's the best one in series plot-wise. So yeah, that deserves a mention. You can read it without reading like the second and the third book, just know that everything is fine in the end, and then they move on to this randomly. I should have said spoilers, but I don't feel like many people care about this series. Sorry. A new release you haven't read yet, but you really want to. All of them? I haven't read a single new release yet, also because I have this gigantic backlog from starting in about 2014 when I started missing out on new releases. So yeah, I'm working through that, and if I have to pick something for this year, I'd say One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. I'm hesitant to actually buy it with my own money because I've heard some mixed reviews about her writing style, and yeah, I don't want to gamble, but I can probably get it from the library soon enough when my library card and everything is fixed. So we're gonna do that. Most anticipated release for second half of this year. This face of fear is because I realized I'm going to have to talk about Any Way the Wind Blows already, and I'm not mentally prepared. It's less than a week until its release date. It's the final book in the Simon Snow series, and I refuse to believe that this is the last time we're gonna see Simon and Baz. I'm gonna get all worked up talking about this release. I do not want to get all worked up, so I'm gonna move on to the next question. I'm not gonna talk about Any Way the Wind Blows anymore because it's just very emotional for me. I'll talk about it some other time and explain what and how and why, but I'm not emotionally stable enough to think about Simon and Baz right now. Biggest disappointment. That would be the only audiobook I listened to so far this year, and that is The Subtweet. I'm still working on a video discussing why I didn't like it and what rubbed me the wrong way about it. I'm really taking my time making that video because I feel like I have a lot to learn about the groups and demographics discussed in the book and the way they experience certain events in the books, because I am coming at it from a very different perspective than the characters, so I feel like I do need to take my time and educate myself on those perspectives and those struggles before I start talking about it, because I think it's very important that I critique a book on things like writing and the actual plot and not accidentally point out something that is just a social issue instead of an issue with the storytelling. So that's coming. I hope soon. Biggest surprise. Jurassic Park. I would show you guys my copy, but my dad is currently putting it on his list of books to read. I don't know what he's doing with it. He has no organization skills when it comes to books whatsoever, so it's sort of kind of lost. Anyway, Jurassic Park was amazing, and apparently very few people know that it was originally a book and then it got adapted and the movie became a hit, and now we all know it, of course. I think I should just say that the people adapting the book into a movie did the most amazing job, because it was like actually reading the movie. It remains so close to the source material, and I really enjoyed this whole science fiction thing. The pace was high. Everything was like it was in a movie or even better, so I can highly recommend reading Jurassic Park. I loved it and I did not expect to love it that much. Still, it's not my best book of the year, but it was a surprise. A favorite new author. Because I reread so many books from my high school days, I didn't really branch out into new genres or discover a lot of new authors, and of the ones that I did discover this year, there were no authors that I immediately put on my favorite authors list. They were fine, don't get me wrong, but no one blew my mind in such a way that I wanted to read all their works. If I had to choose, I'd pick Jeff Vandermeer, and I bought this doorstopper of his. This is the entire Southern Reach trilogy in one book. I think it works better in one book than it would have worked if you have 3 separate copies of each of the books. You might know this one from the movie Annihilation. I watched that on Netflix and then I was like, I need to read that book. It's a bit like Lovecraft. The language was very challenging for me as a non-native speaker of English, but I also enjoyed that because there was this constant push and pull between my brain and the story, and I felt like that was very fitting for the entire concept of Area X as well. So I would recommend that one too if you were already into Lovecraft or similar new weird type of horror. I believe it is horror, even though I do not feel like this book specifically is a horror novel. Newest fictional crush. Ian Malcolm from Jurassic Park? Sorry guys, I don't know. It's been a while since I had a crush on a fictional character. I have to say that the genie from The Golem and the Genie is sort of my type, but I do not have a crush on him. So that's the closest we're gonna get for this question. Newest favorite character. And I'm picking this one up again because I really like the Golem. She is, in my opinion, such a sweet and kind character. And even though there is this more dangerous side to her, she was one of those characters that I would have loved to meet, and I think we could have had a great bond. So she is one of my favorites, more of a comfort character than anything else. A book that made you cry. This one. This one made me cry my eyes out. Like I said, I've already mentioned it in another video, it's set in Second World War in Shanghai, because that was basically the only place that would take in Jewish refugees towards the end of the 1930s. And this story follows a young Jewish girl who emigrates to Shanghai with her parents, and by the time the war ends in this book, it's just such an emotional journey. You're getting dragged into this and you know how hard everything is going to be. You see everything sort of coming and still it hits you like a ton of bricks. I could not help but cry when the war ended. It was such a relief, and at the same time it was devastating to know that everything was in ruins and people still had to go back to something that was probably destroyed. So this was such an emotional read that I'm still choking up right now, like months after, because of the way the book made me feel. Book that made you happy. You're probably gonna get sick of this book, but again, The Golem and the Genie made me very happy. I liked the ending, even though I know that there are people who thought that the ending was a bit, well, painful, I guess. I fell into a Discord discussion about this book like midway through and people were just raving about the ending, but I appreciated the ending a lot. This book made me happy. The most beautiful book you've bought so far this year. That would be this little book called The Water Babies. Personally, I knew it as Tom and the Water Babies, which was the first English book I ever read in my life when I was 8 years old, and then I threw it out when I was like 12 because I was too old for Tom and the Water Babies. You're never too old for like a fairy tale, so I bought myself a new copy when my pay for my student assistant work came in, and it has sprayed edges. Also, it has this embossed thingy here. I don't really know what it is, but I like it. Also a pattern, and it has illustrations in here. Let me see if I can find one. Oh, I got one with an otter. Yay! So yeah, this is my favorite tiny little book in terms of what it looks like, and I'm just really glad to have Tom and the Water Babies back in my collection. What books do you still need to read this year? This is the question where I'm going down. Like, do you guys have all day? Because my TBR basically exploded. The TBR I made at the start of this year is almost completely done and dusted. I took 2 books off because I researched them and realized that one of them was about a topic I did not feel comfortable with, and the other one turned out to just not be my thing. So yeah. I now have only 3 books left of that TBR, and the first one is Smaragdgrün, which belongs to that trilogy. Then I have The Gilded King by Josie Jeffrey, which is a very heavy book for something its size. I get this one in exchange for review, but a thesis happened, and that thesis really messed everything up in my life, so I still haven't got around to reading it. But that is on my list for this summer. And finally, Vampires on a Boat, which is not called Vampires on a Boat, but I always forget the title. So, Fever Dream, George R.R. Martin. What is it about? It's about vampires on a boat. So that's why I always call it that. Ow. Apart from those 3, I also want to read Salem's Lot. I want to read, which one was it? A lot of books. Like, my TBR literally exploded, and I have over 100 books still at my dad's that I want to read someday. So yeah, I have a lot to read. So much so that I think I'd better wrap this video up so I can go back to reading. If you enjoyed this video, you know what you gotta do, you know which buttons to hit. I trust you are able to do that, and I'll see you in the next video, hopefully. And now I'm gonna say bye. Bye.